Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about The Expanse, Season 6, Episode 1. It's called Strange Dogs. So full spoilers for the episode as always. It is the final season. We are here for the last, sadly, only 6 episodes. But alas, it is the end of the journey. And I was very curious as to where we'd be picking this up after the events of last season, so we'll get into all that. Go through the review.
It's kind of interesting as well that the final season's released as the final book just came out like a week or two ago, I think.
Yeah.
Just a weird coincidence of timing, I'm sure. Like obviously there was no planning of that, but just one of those odd things.
No long-term plan. I wonder if maybe as they got close and realised they'd both be ready around the same time, they might have...
It's possible, but it's completely different worlds with the different book publishers being completely different to Amazon doing their thing. I find it unlikely.
It's good for awareness and cross-promotion, if nothing else. So, I mean, we actually start this episode with probably the most unexpanded scene in terms of science fiction, in that we have like a little girl on a planet with alien life. We have little alien birds. There's like an alien, like, she calls it like a duck. I don't know if I'd quite agree with that sentiment, but
yeah, they've all got strange names though that she gives them, don't they?
Yeah, she's got names for them all. And it's like, oh, this is weird. This is like off a different type of sci-fi show. This is off like a sci-fi show where we're already on other worlds. And sure enough, it is on another world. It was like Gate 600 something Planet 2. It was like, okay, so this is one of the many worlds that has been colonized. I guess I'd assume present day, as per the show. You could tell me though later that this is actually set further ahead.
You could.
After time.
Until told otherwise, I will assume present day.
Yes. But it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't be a shocking thing to say.
But again, we're not really seeing what's going on out there other than potentially this. So,
well, I mean, yeah, because
it seems plausible.
The rest of the episode is not concerned with these planets beyond the rings. It's all stuff, dealing with the Marco conflict. And honestly, the general sentiment I got from this episode across most of the plot threads is it's been 6 months since the end of season 5, and everyone is stressed, everyone is tired, and I don't know if bored is the right word, but it's kind of the eternal churn of like this fight that is essentially in a stalemate, where, and maybe even stalemate's not the right word, but it's in this slow moving part where Marco's sending more and more rocks to Earth, and they're actually shooting them down for the most part. It's still having an effect on the climate, as we see later on, but it's not like moving. Like, there's not been like a big event that's drastically changed the direction of this war one way or the other in some time, and everyone's just feeling like nothing's moving.
Yeah, it's become routine, right? Which I think is something most of us can relate to after the last year or so. The idea of something pretty terrible, and then day by day it's the exact same, and it becomes you complacent, I guess.
Yeah,
as a population.
And we see that the effect of this on like all of our main characters throughout the episode, and I think that's really what most of this episode is about. Obviously setting up a few plot beats. We'll start with the Rasi crew, I guess. Best place to start. Our main characters. We have, of course, Peaches on the ship, with the main surviving 3 crew members.
They're still not thrilled about having her there, even after a few months. No,
I mean, Holden's a little up in there. He seems maybe more neutral, whereas Naomi's actively kind of like I wouldn't say confrontational. She doesn't like say anything to her, but it does not hide her feelings on the subject.
A little bit vindictive, maybe.
And it's causing tension with Amos, who is kind of almost standing up to Naomi in a way where it shows that he's kind of like his goal, because his goal with Peaches is actually quite noble. He's kind of trying to do for her what they did for him, and him actually standing up to Naomi and kind of calling her out on her bullshit, trying to defend Peaches, is actually kind of like, it's almost like him breaking away from the like letting them kind of steer him as much, and like him sort of like having a bit more agency on his own. At least as far as Naomi goes. I mean, he's still following Holden's orders. He's still, calling him captain. But even later in the episode, when he thinks Holden might be starting to like obsess over the ring and the ship that went through the ring at the end of last season. He's like, hey, not this. Like, we're here to fight a war with Marco. This is not what we're doing right now.
Not the time.
Yeah, and I'm actually kind of fascinated by like how much of this we're going to even get to in 6 episodes. Like,
I honestly think not that much.
No.
I think we're going to mostly focus on the Marco stuff. That will be probably 80%, maybe even 90% of what this season is. And I think it'll leave it, maybe not, I don't think it'll be like a neat conclusion by any means for everything else. I think it'll be just we'll leave it open for maybe there's more down the line, if it wants to be revisited.
Yeah, I suspect. I mean, I don't think they're not going to mention it. It'll be mentioned again for sure, but I don't think it's going to be the focus of the season by any means. And maybe you can even read this scene as like almost a little meta nod to that in advance.
Kind of like a mission statement of this is what we're doing. Just kind of set your expectations accordingly. So
it's interesting to just to think about where some of that stuff might go, but to stick on the human drama here. So the Rassi crew are shooting down some of these rocks and they're investigating sectors where the Free Navy might have been operating, and they do encounter some rocks that are probably on their way to Earth. It's not until they actually slow down though and investigate one directly with a drone that they find out that no, there's actually a bunch of rocks that are just kind of sitting waiting to be launched. Like, they've all got, they've got thrusters on them. They're waiting to just send out a signal and beam them out. So we get a really cool sequence of like Holden going down and investigating this thruster. I thought this was particularly well directed, how the thruster starts revving up, and it's the first sign of it is that the magnetism starts kicking in, and so this little metal bolt that was on the case that he opened starts like sort of clinking against it, and it kind of does this great thing where it kind of it starts clinking faster and faster as it's like, oh, if he's still on this rock when this thing fires, he's dead. Like, he's a dead man.
And they make that very clear in the dialogue as well. I love the way this was shot as well with the lighting, because it's mostly really quite dark, and you just kind of see a lot of it's like silhouettes almost.
Yeah. No, it's really beautiful. There's that little nice moment where it's too dark at first, and Naomi kind of like just readjust the ship to like, give him some light, and it's just it's this the big version of someone just moving the torch to like let someone see. Yeah. If I even before that, when Amos walks out onto the ship just to check for damage, there's a really fancy shot of him walking as the ship's rotating. So they're kind of flexing a little bit, like, hey, remember, this is some of the Expanse stuff you love. There's
a few shots of stuff like ships in port, just like, establishing shots that look like this show's always looked pretty good, especially for a TV show. It's looked above average, let's be fair.
Oh, yeah.
But some of these shots were just downright stunning, even just like the establishing shots of just these ships in, docked in. And like, I feel like even though it's only 6 episodes, they've still got a pretty meaty budget, probably more per episode than they did.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go as far to say they might have still got the same budget as they did for 10, but yeah, they may have more per episode still.
Yeah, again, I would hesitate to assume they had the same budget as they had for 10. That would be a lot extra, but I do think it is on average more.
So, the long and short of the plot details here is that Naomi does some trickery with signals, realizes this one particular frequency is going to, launch it, and then realizes that this frequency has been used all over these places to launch a bunch of rocks, and therefore the ship that's probably sending out these signals to launch them all is probably within this central radius, and they've got a target, they've got something to go after, which conceivably could actually end this constant bombardment of rocks being sent to Earth. And so it would be a big win, and it feels like this particular part of it feels like a really good 2-episode thing, where this one really set up what the goal was, the consequences of failing or succeeding, and next episode I presume we're going to get to it, because as much as sometimes this show likes to really sort of build the suspense up and, like, I always say drag things out, because I think it's paced very well actually, but I feel like I don't think we're going to be just hunting for this ship that's launching rocks for 6 episodes. I think that would be kind of weird if that's their last season. So
no, I think that'll probably be episode 2, maybe 3, depending on what they do. The show does like to take detours, but
it
again,
does,
I think they're aware it's 6 episodes. They're not going to be taking the piss. They're not going to Game of Thrones this, is what I'll say.
I mean, I've not even seen the last season, but I certainly hope not. Just for reputation. Yeah. So yeah, fun, simple, sets up a goal. We understand what they need to be doing, and as we see on the ship, Naomi's kind of frustrated at Holden because Holden was kind of being risky by not just like evacuating the rock as quickly as he could. We see the tension between Amos and Naomi. We see her feeling tense because she's like, 6 months into this war against people who she, up until the end of last season, would have referred to as her people. So it's it's dividing the Belters, and it seems like more rather than not are siding with Marco. The Free Navy, like they're enlisting a lot of people. People are pledging their allegiance.
Yeah, no, it seems the vast majority. I'm sure there are sections of people that are opposed to them, but they definitely seem to be in the minority.
So yeah, obviously she's conflicted. So that was the sense I got from all these characters, is that this 6 months of just constant chasing rocks, and it's taking a toll on them. Although Peaches, to be fair, is trying to do her best to be useful and just fix things, and she's learned how to do all the things on the ship. So she's practical, and she's got a use, so that she might be invaluable when the time comes. So that's neat.
Nice little surprise weapon.
Yeah, that's cool stuff. And then Avasarala and Bobby back on Earth. Obviously, she hears about this eventually, and it's the potential win they want. Although she does kind of imply at the end of the episode that like she's got something in mind. Like, because Bobby says, do you have like this? Because she says, because Bobby says, finding this would be good. This ship and stopping the rocks would be good. And she's like, no, we don't need good. We need something great. We need something that'll give people hope again, because we're stuck in this place. Because right before, Monica, right before, like, ambushes on the hallway and is like, oh, you got a quote for me? Like, you going to try and make peace with Marco? What are we doing?
It feels like, she wants to make a statement. It feels like the equivalent of, well, they threw a meteorite at us. We need to do something, to show our statement of intent to them, almost.
Yeah, there was like a little reel at the start actually showing there's like news saying, oh, the Razzies joined the fight, and it was almost a direct quote from Starship Troopers, which almost made it look satirical, the way it was phrased. But yeah, there's like a little reel at the start, right after the scene with, or maybe it's right before the scene with Avasarala and Bobby, and they're out at the big farm, which is just covered in snow. The atmosphere is being affected by all these meteors coming hitting the Earth.
It says a lot about the situation, because the Belters are all saying, well, now the Earth, they're going to know what it's like to be one of us. And I'm assuming that they're referring here to the inevitable food shortages that are about to follow, or if not already occurring. I don't know how much they had stockpiled, but imagine this was like a high yield grain production farm. Essentially, it probably fed a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's gone.
And I want to say we saw this speech. Maybe? In season 1? Because she mentions that she gave a speech here when it opened. And it sounded familiar. I was like, I feel like we might have seen this.
Maybe? Season 1 was a long time ago now.
It was, yeah. I mean, I think she said 11 years ago. So, I mean, the timeline, I don't know if it adds up, but like, I feel like I remember something like that in season 1. It felt the sort of scene we'd have gotten her early on to establish who she was. It's her making a speech and saying, hey, we're opening this place to help with food shortages. Blah, blah.
Yeah, I don't remember it specifically, but I couldn't say it didn't happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah, but this is like a symbol of like, oh, Earth's like I mean, we know Earth like obviously has been through a lot of the things that Earth is currently going through in the real world, but it does kind of feel like this constant bombardment and what it's doing to the climate. Like, I don't know if I necessarily got the implication that Earth might like completely not become unlivable, but like there's so much of this show it's talked about Martians wanting Mars to like sort of attain an atmosphere, attain livability like Earth, attain like an ocean, and things like that. And it kind of feels like Earth, the one natural resource that we've always had in the context of the show, might be dwindling.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, maybe a little bit more explicit than you may be suggesting. I think it's stuff like Filip's friend with his his jacket going, these resources, they're not going to last long. These are going to become expensive, and then combined with the Belters have control of the ring and all the resources beyond that. They're kind of putting themselves as, we've got the resources. Earth can come to us in the same way that they always had to go and get their supplies from Earth before.
Yeah, I wonder if like we're past the point of no return, or like, is this permanent, or is this something where the whole point of them constantly hitting them with rocks is to make sure it keeps unstable
I
and
think
never
that
sells?
I think the point is to keep up the damage. I think it might be past a point in no return, but they just don't realize it yet. But they're still just fighting and hoping.
There's also an implication as well, of course, that keeping Earth ships all busy dealing with the rocks means that they're not there to go and fight them elsewhere. So they've got some strategical options. They've been allowed to go around the belt recruiting people quite easily because all of the Earth Alliance and Mars ships are all dealing with the asteroids, right? So it's like you kind of get the strategy of that as well. But that was basically it for Bobby and Avasarala for the most part. Avasarala's got a cute moment where she's kind of enjoying the lack of gravity, which is different for her because she used to hate it.
Yeah, and there's the moment with Bobby and Monica just after Avasarala's kind of stormed off. I say stormed off. She's left the conversation partially because she doesn't want to deal with it anymore, and secondly because she just received the update from Holden.
Yeah.
But Monica's like, hey, you should kind of like keep her in check a bit more, essentially.
We know Avasarala's got a short temper and doesn't like dealing with public relations, shall we say.
And I believe the phrase one uses reminder she has a constituents and not subjects. And Bobby's like, oh, she knows. He's like, oh, well, you were always a terrible liar. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And it tells us a lot about how much Bobby feels about what Avasarala feels right now, and kind of where her current state of mind is. Because obviously we know Avasarala has the best intentions. I don't doubt that. But it is possible she is kind of on too much of war footing and just being like, no, this is priorities. Forget the people almost.
I do wonder though, like if Avasarala is hoping to like win this, like does she have any intention or desire to like be re-elected? Does she care? Is she viewing this as like, no, I'm here to like win this fight, and then I can hang up and let other people run for office because she's already done this before and she left. This was her coming back to this role. It was
not entirely by choice that she left, though, was it? Let's be honest.
No, but like I do wonder like how much of this is her. Like, does she care about her future political career rather than just like dealing with this crisis and getting everyone through this, and then like that can be like her stamp on her legacy. Like, I'm done. I do wonder. Like, I don't know if that is the case, but I do wonder if that's why she isn't as concerned with like thinking about things like that.
Maybe. I'll be honest, I don't even think that's even through her head right now. I think it's more just a win at all costs is kind of what she's thinking of right now. She's probably not thinking of re-election. I think when it comes to it and she's got no chance of continuing, she'll be probably devastated again. But
I'll be curious.
Yeah, I don't think it's what's going through her head.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see that reaction. Drummer, to shift over to Drummer's crew, they're running and hiding. They've been doing that for 6 months. There's a bounty on them. The other girl kind of like presses the wrong button and doesn't fire the weapon she's supposed to. So as a result, they have to set off an explosive which destroys the ship that's hunting them, which is a bad thing because it means that all the resources they could have taken from it are gone, and we find out that they are very depleted on many things. At the top of the list is their munitions. They've only got like 3 torpedoes left, so they're very bare to the bone. They're frustrated, and Drummer, says to her like I know you're trying your best, but you're not a soldier. You were never meant to be, and we're just going to have to find somewhere for you.
After some prodding to her as well.
Oh, sure. She doesn't want to admit it, but she kind of agrees with because this is the thing. There was so much like politicking on her ship last season, and it was like this power play between various characters. I never got the sense from this guy in this scene that he was like trying to power play or manipulate. Like, this was him giving his honest assessment and advice to her.
Yeah, I think it was very genuine. Something obviously we had a lot of last season was how close all these crewmates are. They all have this quite deep relationship between all of them. So this feels a lot more personal, I think, than we could see on other ships.
And to be fair, Drummer did not enjoy giving her this news. Like, this was a hard thing for her to say, as much as it was for the other one to hear. So
yeah, and she just like goes and lies on the bed and cries.
Yeah. So not a lot. Like, because I think this episode makes a point of establishing all of our characters' threads when we don't necessarily need them every episode. So this one, there's a few threads that are just a 2 or 3 scenes each, and that's all they get. But they're effective in what they accomplish, though, because I think this does neatly set up where they are right now, and what they're doing. So they're taking a long trip to get to a safer station, but it is at the risk of fuel, and we'll see where they end up. But Drummer's Crew definitely does feel like the thread that we could skip for an episode or two after this, given where they are.
It does. I kind of hope not, because it's possibly my favorite thread.
Sure. Yeah.
Drummer's stuff again, over the last few seasons has just grown and grown and grown to become one of my favorite elements of the show.
No, our character's very unique. A lot like Amos is very unique. The way she runs her crew, the fact that she sort of started off as this secondary character and rose to being a character with her own plot line. And that only increased when Ashford went at the end of season 4. So, yeah, no, super. Like, it was very nice just to see all these characters again. Like, that was the main thing. It was comforting to see them again after a year away. And, like, it's kind of bittersweet because it's the last time. You've only got a couple of 100 minutes left of these characters, at least in this form, on this show. So,
yes. Thankfully, I still have all the books to read.
That said, though, I mean, there is one set of characters that aren't as comforting to come back to. So, yeah, Marcos and of course Philip or Filip, however you pronounce it. All to be as much as I'm saying that, because obviously they're antagonists, right? And and Marcos especially is very unlikable. Filip does have some interesting stuff in this episode, and I think what's interesting about it for me in this one is that it kind of swerved me on what I thought it was doing and what the direction was. Because at first I thought, we see him with, some random girl in like not an alleyway because it's a ship, or a station, but like the equivalent of an alleyway on a space station, just having like, quick nasty sex. And then immediately when he goes to see his father, he's already eyeing up the waitress, and I'm like, okay, so he's become a bit of a playboy. He's
yeah, and during this scene, when he goes to see his father, it's a meeting that's going on that he's supposed to be paying attention to, presumably.
Yeah, but it does this thing where a couple of scenes later, Marcos they're chatting his name on the station, and he gives this speech about Ceres, which is where they are, and it's under their control now. He gives this speech about how Ceres is the capital city of the Belter Nation, and he gives this speech that gets them all chanting. And then later in the episode, though, the thing that we're having the meeting about comes back up, and he's got like his new second in command. This woman, Guling, I think her name is. Just glancing at the IMDb, but she's like, "Hey, we don't have anything to spare to give like food and supplies to Ceres before we leave, or something to that effect." And Marcos is basically ready to just sort of shrug it off and be like, "Well, we have to go. Do they have to be harder on the rations or whatever." Mm-hmm. And Philip chimes in and says, "Yeah, but this is the capital city of the of the Belter Nation. Like, we should give them what they need." And they just kind of shoot him down, and then eventually it's like, "Oh, we're going to keep talking, but in private." And they just sort of like, I think Marcus just kind of like basically shoos him away.
They embarrass him by going, well, all right, well, what's your logistical solution then? He's like, I think it's like, it's your job, sort it out.
Yeah,
like,
pretty much.
They're like, piss off, essentially.
And obviously, yeah, he doesn't really have a plan or anything. But I did kind of take him saying, "No, you gave that speech about how they're important to us, about how these people are why we're doing this, and why this is like an important place." And you're immediately just kind of like, "Oh, this is rations or whatever. Like, we can't do anything for them." So it kind of felt like he wanted to feel like he's actually doing what's being promised, and it felt like a good quality was kind of coming out of him. It was buried in between, like, his naivete, his being distracted, all these other things. But it felt like maybe it was going to try and do something where he was going to actually try and be for the people what Marcos was kind of promising them, and he was going to sort of see I
think he was kind of suckered in by the honorable promises.
Yes.
And maybe he's just realizing now that maybe Naomi was right.
That is very possible. But it takes a swerve though, right? Because later in the episode, like, so his friend who we meet, who's like the one who was like bragging that he's got alligator skinned waistcoat or something, he's like, oh, I got two girls. So again, this is like the third potential like partner he's had this episode. But he's bragging. He's got all these tattoos based on all the different like ships or like Earthers that he's killed, or all the missions.
He gets one after every battle, after every target they take out.
Yeah, and the girls are super impressed, and he's like, yeah, but I wasn't involved in the Earth attack. But Filip here, like he was the spearhead of the whole thing. He's so directly, and he was directly involved in all that stuff. But this makes him uncomfortable.
Embarrassed by it.
Yeah, he gets uncomfortable. It's almost like he's getting like like a soldier that comes back from like war and they have PTSD. Like it's almost like he has an attack almost, and he has to just get out of there and leave.
Yeah, it's almost like he's feeling a bit guilty.
It did feel like guilt, didn't it? It felt a lot like guilt. Almost like the people on Earth might be like the people here who are now just being kind of like treated like not quite cattle, but like, no, we can't do anything for them.
It's possible, isn't it?
But so just when you think so this is still in line with the earlier stuff, right? Where I'm thinking, oh, we're having a bit of a face turn where he's starting to feel maybe some guilt. He's starting to sort of look at people differently and see them as human beings and not just like want to be this leader like his father, because that's kind of what we suckered him by. But then he has this scene where he tries to chat up the bartender again at the little bar, and when she turns him down, he gets angry, throws his glass and says, oh, you're lucky I'm even talking to someone like you. And then his friend shows up, his friend who's genuinely concerned. He's a little shithead who was bragging about all his war things, but
I think as well, before the friend, maybe as the friend shows up, but before he starts dealing with him, he's yelling at the bartender, is like, hey, all these things I've done for like, to save people like you. Like, it's like he's trying to convince himself of, that, oh, you don't need to feel guilty. You've been doing the right thing.
Yeah. It's like he's looking for. It's funny, like he was almost offended that his friend was trying to use it as like sex currency before.
And now here he is doing the same.
But the second he got turned down, trying to sort of like chat someone up, I mean, I don't want to say legitimately, because he was just kind of coming on strong, and it was basically just, let's go and have sex. That was basically all he was saying. It was
his friend basically points that out as well. It's like, you could try being a bit more subtle.
And trust me, his friend is not subtle.
No, just saying something, isn't it?
Yeah. But as soon as like that fails, he immediately sort of like goes back on it, but gets angry that it's not like, you should just know that I am this important person. And he feels belittled because his father belittled him earlier. Like you say, they made fun of him. So he has this reaction where he gets aggressive with a friend, and the friend is trying his best. Like, don't do this. Let's just go back to the ship. And he's trying to be a friend to him. And Filip goes to hit him, and he misses because the friend's like more sober than he is, and he punches him back. And Filip just pulls out a gun and shoots him. And it's like, oh shit, okay. So clearly I can still be empathetic as to why you have all these mixed. I mean, let's face it, his upbringing and the father he's had has definitely played a number on his personality.
Yes, but that doesn't excuse his actions.
No, this is like, okay, much like last season we kept saying, oh, he can't completely be redeemed because he's crossed the line, and that's unfortunate. And this episode kind of did that again, kind of in a sort of nutshell, where it was like, hey, he might be more sympathetic, and to an extent he is, but oh no, he's really screwed up, and like,
it also does that smart thing of personalizing it. Whereas we always talk about how you can threaten to take out the whole Earth, and it's kind of meaningless. But you do one person that we care about, and it has a lot more impact. And it's not that we care about this friend, but it's the idea of, no, there is a person here. It's one face.
Yeah,
it's got a bit more meaning, and for him as well. Sure, he was involved in the attack on Earth pretty heavily, but he didn't see the result of that, not directly. This time he's in the same room as the person. He looked in their face, after he did it, and he's going to feel that a lot more.
I think it's really well done. I think this kind of realization on his part, and it's not like this magic realization where all of a sudden he's a good person. Like he is struggling to like come to terms with this, and it's made him lash out and kill someone. Or well, I mean, we don't know for sure he's dead yet. Maybe he survives.
Assuming so, but they could swerve it, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not this clean thing where he's just went through this arc, and like this is messy and confusing, and he doesn't know how to process it. And his father, we praised last season how good his father was at like recognizing when he was losing him a little bit and sort of manipulating him, like turning gears, just switching to a different gear a little, just to like get him back on board. and how good he was at doing that. And it kind of feels like it's bad enough that Naomi like was like sort of entranced by him and had to sort of like realize who he was and realize what he did to sort of keep her under control. It's even worse for someone who was a child and sort of brought up when they were at
never
their
knew
most,
any better.
yeah, when they were at their most impressionable, when they're malleable, and trying to self-realize when you get to a certain age where you can self-realize and perhaps come to terms with the fact that your parents or guardians have taught you a lot of bad things. I mean, that's a really simplistic way of looking at it, but I'm thinking of like, take for example like a set of racist parents who raised their child to be racist. Like, unfortunately, a lot of those people who are raised just keep being racist. So it's kind of an interesting thing to explore, the ones who sort of like get to about 20 or something around there and start to sort of question it and go, maybe this isn't right, what I've been taught my entire life. Maybe I should look at this differently. But this is obviously on a bigger, grander scale because he's actually helped kill lots of people. But
it is. But again, it brings this realistic weight to it. The idea of, it is hard for those people. Don't get me wrong, I'm not like, they're inherently, it's not that they're necessarily terrible people from the start. Obviously, it's like how they were brought up to be, essentially.
Yeah,
bad
people aren't born terrible. It's beaten into them almost.
Yeah, and it's in a lot of ways not really their fault that they end up as bad people because of that.
But the thing is, though, there's a point where you're just the one going to beat it into the next generation at a certain point. Where
yes, there's a point where you're culpable for your own actions as well.
Yeah. It's a really obviously nuanced topic to discuss, and it's the sort of thing where you can't really have any tolerance for someone because like what they're doing is so dangerous to everyone else, and who they are is so dangerous to everyone else. But yeah, there is like a truth to this where like there are factors around a person that makes them the way they are, and Marcos, of course, is like the worst possible.
It's possible to be empathetic towards someone and understand why they are the way that they are, yet also acknowledge that there are consequences for their actions and that those will happen and should happen.
Yeah, because there's a way Marcos is the way he is, but like he is long past the point where he will ever get any empathy because he is consciously making choices and doing things and acting upon things. And I'm not saying that someone who does something bad can't then sort of realize the error of their ways and try to like make atonement for it, try to redeem themselves, try to be better and sort of teach what they've learned to others so that others won't make the same mistakes. These are all possible things. Admittedly, again, we're on this grand scale though, where what he did was help murder millions of people and potentially screw an entire planet and like cause like famine and all the things that will come from it.
There is no way he will ever be good again.
Yes.
It will be. I don't want to say it's impossible for the show to redeem him because with amazing writing, who knows?
Redeem is a strong word, but I would be shocked if he is not pivotal in stopping Marcos.
Yes, I agree in that. In coming around, understanding what he did, and taking steps to obviously can't undo what he did, but taking steps to fix it is possible. And I think he's a strong, well-written enough character that I could definitely see them taking that route, and it wouldn't at all feel like a betrayal or cheap or bad or anything like that. It would feel like really strong writing. Yeah, and it would take strong writing to do it convincingly.
Because the thing, though, it may not even be a conscious choice because he wants to do something good. It could be something more where just his relationship with his father deteriorates and he wants to stop him to get at him, rather than because it's some noble, like, oh, I need to save like lives. And that could also work, and it would be less empathetic, obviously, but it would still function and work with the characters. And I am very curious as to how Marcos reacts to this next episode. Like, is this something he has to try and cover up because of like who his son is? Is this something he brushes away? Is he angry at him? Does he take this seriously? Like, what is his attitude towards this?
There's a potential for him to be almost proud in the sense of he is taking action and kind of. Because towards the start of this episode, or this plot, Marcus is very dismissive of Filip, especially, he's just, going off with the girls instead of paying attention and doing what he's supposed to be doing. And this here, it could almost be read as, he's taking things more seriously, standing up for himself. He's kind of going to become more of a man, so to speak, to Marcos. So maybe that's kind of how he could see it. Not saying he will, but I wouldn't be surprised.
And it's notable as well that all the sex he's having is completely meaningless. Like that first scene we have with him, like as soon as he's done it, cuts to like the aftermath. He's just like, he just looks bored. He doesn't even want to look at her. He just sort of gets bored and walks away. Like he's not. There's no like post sex like, oh, we're giggly and happy or whatever. There's nothing. It's just, oh well, that's that. Away I go. Like, you know, doesn't even know her name.
Yeah, and I don't think it's about the sex anyway, because obviously he could have it with the, you know, when they've got the two girls.
Oh yeah.
And he's even before he has the potentially guilty moment, he feels bored.
Yeah, because I think it's like, it's what he's supposed to want, and it's what he's supposed to do to distract himself from things.
It is, and it's also, I think, as well, he's fixated on the bartender. I think it's more that he wants the chase, right? He wants to know he can get what he wants rather than actually having it. So he wants to know that he can rather than actually wanting it for its own reason.
Entitled, you might say.
Yes, you could say that.
Yeah. Entitled little shit because his father's this important guy. Not quite rich in the traditional sense, but in the context of Bellers,
borderline royalty.
Yes.
At this point.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. He's the leader of their entire civilization, basically. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, super fascinating. I'm really intrigued to see how this plays next episode, or maybe episode 3 if they take an episode off from it. But I'm curious to see what the fallout from this from him directly and the people around him. And it could be another example of Marcos kind of like, how much does he really care about the people that he's fighting for if he like tries to like hush this up by like let's say the bartender, like maybe she wants to like, you know, like, no, he did this, he's a murderer, we'd have to do something about this. Maybe Marcos is in a position where he has to silence someone, like, and what does that say about him if he does? Like, I mean, I don't know if that's the route it's going to take, but these are all they're all possible. So yeah, no, solid first episode. These are all,
it's again, it's not a particularly flashy like blow you away episode, but it's a great episode at doing what Expanse does best in kind of just, these are all these deep character motivations and these moments that kind of build on each other.
Yeah, this is setting up all of the things we're playing with for the 5 more episodes. Only 5. Dear. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have much more to say as the episodes roll on. But let us know what you thought of this first one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. It helps us out a lot. Every YouTuber tells you to do it, so hit the buttons. You can also, of course, go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and keep all the content coming for as little as $1 per month, and keep all the reviews and stuff sustainable. I like that word, sustainable. I've been using that. Keep it sustainable.
It's a good word.
Yeah. But yes, that is otherwise us, though. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?